Have you ever pulled leftovers out of the refrigerator, heated them in the microwave, and assumed they were just as safe as when they were freshly cooked? If so, you're certainly not alone. But here's something that surprises many people. For some foods, the biggest concern isn't that reheating automatically causes cancer. It's that improper storage and repeated heating can create harmful compounds or allow dangerous bacteria to grow. Understanding the difference can help you make safer choices every day. As a physician and researcher, I often hear people say, I read that reheating this food causes cancer. The truth is usually much more nuanced. Some popular beliefs are myths, while others are based on real food safety science that deserves attention. In today's video, we'll separate fact from fiction and look at 4 foods that require extra care when reheating, why scientists are concerned, and how simple changes in your kitchen habits can reduce unnecessary health risks. If you value science-based health advice that helps you protect yourself and your family, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves learning practical health tips. By the end of this video, you'll know which foods deserve extra caution, why temperature and storage matter just as much as reheating itself, and the safest ways to enjoy leftovers without falling for common myths. The claim that you should never reheat certain foods has been circulating for decades. You've probably heard warnings like, reheated rice can poison you, microwaved spinach causes cancer, or chicken becomes toxic if you warm it up twice. These statements spread quickly because they sound alarming, but are they actually true? The answer is more interesting and far more useful than a simple yes or no. As a physician and researcher, I believe it's important to separate myths from evidence. When we understand the real science, we make better decisions without unnecessary fear. And when it comes to reheating food, the biggest danger usually isn't the reheating process itself. It's what happens before the food is reheated. Research consistently shows that food safety depends on 3 major factors: how the food was cooked, how quickly it was cooled, and how it was stored before being reheated. If any of these steps are ignored, bacteria can multiply to dangerous levels long before the microwave or oven is ever turned on. That's a completely different story from saying that reheating food automatically creates cancer-causing substances. Let's begin by clearing up one of the biggest misconceptions. Many people believe that heat somehow transforms ordinary food into something poisonous. Current scientific evidence does not support this idea for most common foods. In fact, millions of people safely eat reheated meals every single day. The real concern is something called the temperature danger zone. Medical experts explain that bacteria grow rapidly when food remains between about 40 degrees and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, or roughly 4 to 60 degrees Celsius. If cooked food sits at room temperature for several hours, bacteria can multiply quickly. What's important to understand is that some bacteria don't just grow, they also produce toxins. This is where the story becomes more serious. Certain bacterial toxins are remarkably heat resistant. Even if you later reheat the food until it's steaming hot, the bacteria may die, but some toxins they've already produced can remain. In other words, reheating isn't what created the problem. The problem had already developed because the food was left out too long. This distinction is incredibly important because it changes how we protect ourselves. Instead of fearing the microwave, we should focus on proper food handling. For example, imagine you cook dinner at 6 o'clock in the evening. The meal stays on the kitchen counter until midnight. The next morning, you refrigerate it. Later that afternoon, you heat it thoroughly and eat it. Many people assume the reheating made the food dangerous. In reality, the biggest risk occurred overnight while the food remained at room temperature, giving bacteria plenty of time to multiply. Now, let's address another common misunderstanding. Some people believe that microwaves somehow change the molecular structure of food in dangerous ways. This myth has persisted for years despite a lack of scientific evidence. Microwaves work by causing water molecules inside food to vibrate rapidly, generating heat. That's all. They do not make food radioactive. They do not inject harmful radiation into your meal. They do not create mysterious cancer-causing chemicals simply because the food was heated. In fact, microwave ovens often preserve certain nutrients better than longer cooking methods because they usually require less cooking time and less water. The key issue isn't whether you use a microwave, an oven, an air fryer, or a stovetop. The key issue is whether the food reaches a safe internal temperature throughout. Uneven heating can leave cooler pockets where bacteria survive. That's why experts recommend stirring soups, rotating food when possible, and allowing it to rest briefly after heating so the temperature becomes more even. Another myth involves protein-rich foods like chicken, eggs, or fish. You've probably heard someone say that reheated chicken becomes toxic. Current scientific evidence does not support that claim. Chicken does not suddenly become poisonous because it was reheated. However, chicken is highly nutritious, not just for humans, but also for bacteria. If cooked chicken isn't refrigerated properly, bacteria can multiply rapidly. Again, the concern is storage, not reheating. The same principle applies to fish, turkey, beef, and many other protein-rich foods. Safe storage protects you. Proper reheating finishes the job. Now, let's talk about another source of confusion: chemical changes during cooking. It is true that high temperatures can sometimes create compounds scientists are studying, such as heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These compounds tend to form during grilling, barbecuing, frying, or charring meat at very high temperatures, not because leftovers were reheated the next day. Similarly, repeated heating of cooking oils, especially deep frying oils used multiple times, may increase oxidation products that researchers are investigating for potential health effects. But that's different from reheating last night's dinner once. Context matters. Science is often more nuanced than internet headlines suggest. Another reason these myths spread so easily is because they usually contain a small piece of truth. Take rice as an example. You've probably heard the warning that reheated rice causes food poisoning. The rice itself isn't the villain. Uncooked rice may naturally contain spores from a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. Cooking destroys most active bacteria, but may not eliminate every spore. If cooked rice sits at room temperature for several hours, those spores can germinate into bacteria that produce toxins. Later reheating may kill many bacteria, but cannot always destroy certain toxins. Notice what actually caused the danger, not the reheating, the improper storage. This same pattern appears again and again with many foods. The timeline matters more than the microwave. Let's also discuss leftovers in general. Leftovers are not unhealthy. In fact, they can help reduce food waste, save money, and make healthy eating much easier during busy weeks. Preparing meals in advance has even been associated with healthier dietary habits because people are less likely to rely on highly processed convenience foods. The important thing is handling leftovers correctly. Medical experts generally recommend refrigerating cooked foods within about 2 hours or within 1 hour if the surrounding temperature is very hot. Shallow containers help food cool more quickly than large, deep containers. Rapid cooling reduces the time bacteria have to multiply. Once refrigerated, leftovers should generally be eaten within several days, depending on the type of food. Freezing extends storage much longer because bacterial growth slows dramatically at freezing temperatures. Another question I hear frequently is whether reheating food multiple times is dangerous. The answer depends less on the number of reheating cycles and more on how long the food repeatedly spends in the temperature danger zone. Imagine repeatedly taking soup out of the refrigerator, warming only one bowl, then returning the rest immediately. That's usually much safer than warming the entire pot over and over again throughout the week. Every unnecessary cycle of warming and cooling increases opportunities for bacterial growth if the food isn't handled properly. That's why experts often recommend reheating only the portion you plan to eat. It's a simple habit that improves both safety and food quality. Food quality is another important topic. Sometimes people confuse quality changes with safety concerns. Reheated vegetables may become softer. Chicken may become drier. Pasta may lose its texture. These changes affect taste, not necessarily safety. Nutrient levels may also change slightly with repeated cooking, particularly for heat-sensitive vitamins such as vitamin C. But these nutritional changes are generally modest and don't suddenly make the food unhealthy. In fact, for some foods like tomatoes, cooking can actually increase the availability of beneficial compounds such as lycopene. Once again, the science is more balanced than many headlines suggest. Perhaps the most valuable lesson is this: food safety isn't about memorizing a long list of foods you should never reheat. It's about understanding principles. Cook food thoroughly, cool it promptly, store it properly, refrigerate leftovers without unnecessary delay, reheat them evenly until they're piping hot. Avoid leaving food sitting on the counter for extended periods. These habits dramatically reduce your risk of foodborne illness. As we continue, you'll discover that while most reheated foods are perfectly safe when handled correctly, there are a few specific foods that deserve extra attention, not because they magically become cancer-causing overnight, but because their unique characteristics make them more vulnerable to bacterial contamination, toxin formation, or quality changes if they're not stored and reheated the right way. Understanding these foods and the science behind them can help you protect your health with confidence instead of fear. In the next section, we'll examine the first of these foods and uncover what current research really says. Now that we've separated myth from reality, let's focus on the foods that deserve extra attention. Notice I didn't say foods you should never reheat. That's because current scientific evidence does not support the idea that these foods automatically become poisonous or cancer-causing after being reheated. Instead, these foods can become risky if they are stored improperly, left at room temperature for too long, or reheated incorrectly. Understanding why they're different is far more valuable than memorizing a list. Let's look at each one. Rice may seem harmless. It's one of the most commonly eaten foods in the world, and millions of people reheat leftover rice every day without any problems. So, why do food safety experts repeatedly mention rice? The answer has nothing to do with the microwave. It has everything to do with a naturally occurring bacterium called Bacillus cereus. This bacterium lives in soil and can sometimes be present on raw grains of rice before they're even cooked. During cooking, most active bacteria are destroyed. However, Bacillus cereus can produce spores that survive normal cooking temperatures. Think of these spores like tiny survival capsules. While the rice is hot, they remain inactive, But if cooked rice sits on the kitchen counter for several hours, those spores can wake up, multiply, and begin producing toxins. Here's the important part: even if you later reheat that rice until it's steaming hot, the bacteria may be killed, but some toxins may remain. Those toxins can cause nausea, vomiting, stomach cramps, or diarrhea. Notice what caused the illness: not reheating, improper storage. According to food safety experts, cooked rice should be cooled quickly and refrigerated within about 2 hours after cooking, or even sooner in very warm environments. Store it in shallow containers so it cools faster. When you're ready to eat it, reheat only the amount you need until it's hot all the way through. If the rice has been sitting at room temperature overnight, it's much safer to throw it away than to take the risk. No meal is worth food poisoning. The next food often appears on internet lists with dramatic headlines: spinach, along with kale, Swiss chard, beet greens, celery, and a few other vegetables. Spinach naturally contains compounds called nitrates. Immediately, many people become worried because they've heard nitrates are linked to cancer. But that's only part of the story. Nitrates themselves are naturally found in vegetables, and they're actually associated with many health benefits. Research suggests diets rich in leafy green vegetables support heart health, healthy blood pressure, and healthy circulation. So, why the concern? Under certain conditions, nitrates can be converted into compounds called nitrites. Then, under very specific circumstances, nitrites can participate in reactions that produce compounds known as nitrosamines, some of which have been shown to cause cancer in laboratory studies. This sounds alarming until you understand the context. Current scientific evidence does not show that simply reheating spinach, it's once in your microwave, suddenly creates dangerous levels of cancer-causing compounds. In fact, health organizations continue recommending leafy green vegetables as part of a healthy diet. The bigger concern, again, involves storage. If cooked vegetables sit out for long periods, bacterial growth becomes possible, just as with many other cooked foods. Repeated heating and cooling may also reduce quality and destroy some heat-sensitive nutrients. If you cook spinach for dinner and refrigerate it promptly, reheating it the next day is generally considered safe. The myth that reheated spinach automatically causes cancer is not supported by current evidence. That said, it's still wise to avoid repeatedly warming and cooling the same vegetables over several days. Freshly prepared vegetables usually offer the best texture, flavor, and nutrient retention. Chicken is one of the most misunderstood foods when it comes to reheating. You've probably heard someone confidently say, "Never reheat chicken, it becomes toxic." Fortunately, that's not true. Chicken doesn't suddenly change into something poisonous after spending a night in the refrigerator. However, chicken deserves respect because it's an excellent environment for bacterial growth if mishandled. Raw chicken can naturally carry bacteria such as Salmonella or Campylobacter. Proper cooking destroys these bacteria. But after cooking, if the chicken remains in the temperature danger zone for too long, new bacterial contamination can occur. Imagine finishing dinner and leaving roasted chicken on the dining table all evening, even though it was perfectly cooked initially. Bacteria from the surrounding environment now have several hours to multiply. The next day, reheating cannot always undo the damage if toxins have already formed or contamination has become extensive. This is why timing matters so much. Experts recommend refrigerating cooked chicken promptly. Uh, when reheating, the internal temperature should reach 165 degrees Fahrenheit or 74 degrees Celsius, ensuring the center is thoroughly heated. Large pieces should be cut into smaller portions if necessary, so heat reaches every part evenly. One common mistake is partially reheating food. Many people warm chicken just enough to take the chill off. Unfortunately, lukewarm temperatures are exactly where bacteria can survive more easily. The chicken should be piping hot throughout. Another practical tip is to reheat only the portion you intend to eat. Repeated warming and cooling reduces both quality and safety over time. While reheated chicken may become slightly drier, dryness is a quality issue, not a sign that it has become dangerous. Held correctly, leftover chicken can be both safe and nutritious. The final food surprises many people. Potatoes. Most people think potatoes are among the safest leftovers or imaginable. Usually they are, but under certain conditions, they can become problematic. The concern isn't the potato itself, it's what happens after cooking. Cooked potatoes are moist, nutrient rich, and capable of supporting bacterial growth if they're left at room temperature for extended periods. One bacterium occasionally discussed is Clostridium botulinum, the organism responsible for botulism. Fortunately, botulism from potatoes is extremely rare. However, there is one situation that deserves attention. If baked potatoes are wrapped tightly in aluminum foil and left at room temperature for many hours, the low oxygen environment inside the foil may allow conditions favorable for bacterial growth. Again, notice the pattern. The issue isn't reheating, it's storage. Food safety experts recommend removing foil after baking if the potatoes won't be eaten immediately. Allow them to cool safely and refrigerate them promptly. When reheating potatoes, make sure they're heated evenly until they're steaming throughout. Mashed potatoes deserve similar attention because they often contain butter, milk, or cream. Improper storage creates even greater opportunities for bacterial growth. If mashed potatoes have been sitting on the buffet table all afternoon, reheating them later isn't the safest choice. Fresh preparation is always preferable in those situations. Have you noticed something interesting? Each of these four foods has a different reputation. Rice is blamed because of bacterial spores, leafy greens because of nitrates, chicken because of bacterial contamination, potatoes because of storage conditions. Yet the same lesson appears every single time. The greatest danger isn't reheating. The greatest danger is improper food handling before reheating ever begins. That's why food safety experts emphasize simple habits instead of fear. Cool foods quickly, refrigerate leftovers promptly. Avoid leaving cooked meals on the counter for hours. Store leftovers in clean, shallow containers. Reheat only what you'll eat. Heat food thoroughly. Discard leftovers that have been forgotten outside the refrigerator. These practices reduce your risk far more effectively than avoiding reheated food altogether. Another important point is that none of these foods has been proven to become inherently cancer causing simply because they were reheated once. Cancer develops through complex biological processes involving genetics, lifestyle, environmental exposures, tobacco use, obesity, alcohol consumption, chronic inflammation, ultraviolet radiation, certain infections, and many other factors. No reputable medical organization recommends avoiding properly refrigerated leftovers simply because they've been reheated. Instead, they focus on preventing foodborne illness through safe food handling. Uh, that's an important distinction because misinformation can sometimes distract us from the risks that truly matter. The goal isn't to make you afraid of leftovers. The goal is to help you use them wisely by understanding the science. Instead of relying on internet myths, you can enjoy leftover meals with confidence while protecting yourself and your family from preventable foodborne illness. In the next section, we'll bring everything together with simple, evidence based reheating habits that can dramatically improve food safety in your own kitchen without wasting food or giving up the convenience of leftovers. Now that we've explored the science behind the most commonly misunderstood foods, let's focus on what really matters: the habits that keep your food safe. If there's one message I'd like you to remember from this entire video, it's this: reheating isn't the enemy, unsafe food handling is. That's a powerful distinction because it shifts your attention away from internet myths and towards simple, evidence based practices that can genuinely reduce your risk of foodborne illness. The good news is that these habits aren't complicated. You don't need expensive equipment or specialized knowledge. In fact, a few small changes in how you cool, store, and reheat leftovers can make a significant difference. Let's walk through the most important ones. One of the biggest mistakes people make happens long before the food is reheated. Dinner ends, everyone relaxes. The dishes stay on the table while people watch television, finish conversations, or scroll through their phones before anyone realizes it. 3 or 4 hours have passed. This is exactly the situation food safety experts want us to avoid. Research consistently shows that bacteria multiply rapidly when food remains in what's known as the temperature danger zone between 40 Fahrenheit and 140 Fahrenheit, 4 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. At these temperatures, bacteria don't just survive, many of them multiply incredibly fast. Some species can double their numbers in as little as 20 minutes under ideal conditions. That means a meal that seemed perfectly safe at dinner can become much riskier if left out for hours. A simple rule recommended by food safety authorities is to refrigerate cooked food within 2 hours. If you're outdoors on a hot summer day or the room temperature is especially warm, aim for 1 hour or less. This one habit alone dramatically reduces bacterial growth. Many people believe placing hot food in the refrigerator is harmful. Years ago, this advice was common because older refrigerators struggled to maintain cold temperatures. Modern refrigerators are much more efficient. Instead of allowing a large pot of soup or stew to sit on the counter all evening, it's often safer to help it cool more quickly. One of the best methods is dividing large portions into smaller, shallow containers. Why? Because shallow containers allow heat to escape much faster. Imagine pouring soup into 6 small containers instead of one deep pot. Each container cools more efficiently, reducing the amount of time spent in the bacterial danger zone. This simple step is especially useful for foods like chili, rice, casseroles, pasta, mashed potatoes, and stews. The faster leftovers cool safely, the less opportunity bacteria have to multiply. Proper storage isn't just about putting food into the refrigerator. The type of container matters. Choose clean containers with tight fitting lids. This helps reduce contamination, preserves moisture, and keeps foods from absorbing odors from other items in the refrigerator. It's also a good idea to label leftovers with the date they were prepared. Most people don't remember exactly when they cooked something. Was it Monday or was it last Thursday? If you're unsure, it's often safer not to take the chance. According to food safety guidance, most refrigerated leftovers are best eaten within 3 to 4 days. Beyond that point, bacterial growth and food quality become greater concerns. If you know you won't eat the food within several days, freezing is an excellent option. Freezing doesn't necessarily kill all bacteria, but it dramatically slows their growth. Many cooked meals freeze surprisingly well, making healthy eating both safer and more convenient. Now comes the part most people think about first actually reheating, whether you use a microwave, oven, air fryer, or stovetop. The goal is the same. Heat the food evenly until it's thoroughly hot. Food safety experts generally recommend reheating leftovers to an internal temperature of 165 Fahrenheit, 74 degrees Celsius. This temperature helps destroy many harmful bacteria that may have developed during storage. One challenge with microwave ovens is uneven heating. You've probably experienced this yourself. One bite is almost too hot to eat. The next bite is still cold. Cold spots matter because bacteria can survive in areas that never become hot enough. Fortunately, there's an easy solution. Pause halfway through heating, stir soups roti, casseroles, flip larger pieces of meat, then continue heating. Afterward, let the food rest for a minute or two. The heat continues spreading throughout the meal, helping eliminate cold spots. These simple steps make microwave reheating both effective and safe. Here's another habit many people overlook. Imagine reheating an entire pot of soup every evening. After dinner, the leftovers go back into the refrigerator. The next day, the whole pot is reheated again, then cooled again, then refrigerated again. This repeated cycle isn't ideal. Every trip through the temperature danger zone creates another opportunity for bacterial growth if cooling is delayed. Instead, remove only the portion you plan to eat. Leave the remaining food refrigerated. This not only improves safety, but also preserves flavor and texture. Your leftovers will usually taste fresher as well. One of the biggest misconceptions about spoiled food is believing you'll always see it, smell it, or taste it. Unfortunately, that's not true. Some dangerous bacteria don't noticeably change the appearance, smell, or flavor of food. A meal can look completely normal while still containing harmful microorganisms or toxins. That's why relying solely on your senses isn't enough. Instead, rely on safe food handling habits. If leftovers have been sitting on the counter all night, don't perform a smell test. Discard them. If you're unsure how long they've been in the refrigerator, it's usually better to prepare something fresh. As food safety experts often say, when in doubt, throw it out. It may feel wasteful in the moment, but it's far less costly than dealing with severe food poisoning. While safe reheating practices matter for everyone, some people need to be especially cautious. These include older adults, pregnant women, young children, people with weakened immune systems, individuals receiving chemotherapy, organ transplant recipients, those with certain chronic illnesses. For these groups, foodborne infections can become much more serious. An illness that causes mild stomach discomfort in one person could lead to hospitalization in another. If you're preparing meals for someone in one of these higher risk groups, careful food handling becomes even more important. Food safety doesn't stop once leftovers go inside the refrigerator. The refrigerator itself needs to be cold enough. Experts recommend keeping it at 40 Fahrenheit, 4 degrees Celsius or below. If your refrigerator is warmer than that, bacteria can continue multiplying more quickly than expected. Many people never actually check their refrigerator temperature. An inexpensive refrigerator thermometer can provide peace of mind and help ensure your appliance is working properly. Also, avoid overcrowding the refrigerator. Cold air needs room to circulate around stored food. A tightly packed refrigerator may cool unevenly, creating warmer areas where food doesn't stay as cold as intended. Even perfectly reheated food can become contaminated again if it touches dirty utensils or surfaces. Use clean cutting boards. Wash your hands before handling food. Avoid placing cooked meat back onto the same plate that previously held it raw. These basic hygiene practices may sound simple, but they remain among the most effective ways to reduce foodborne illness. Sometimes the greatest protection comes from habits we hardly notice. By now, you may have noticed a common theme throughout this entire discussion. Uh, Food safety isn't built on fear, it's built on understanding. The internet often promotes dramatic headlines because they're memorable. Never reheat rice. Uh, Microwaves cause cancer. Chicken becomes poisonous. But science tells a different story. Current evidence shows that properly cooked, promptly refrigerated, safely stored, and thoroughly reheated leftovers can absolutely be part of a healthy diet. In fact, using leftovers wisely has several benefits. It reduces food waste, it saves money, it makes healthy home cooked meals more convenient during busy weeks. It can even make it easier to stick with nutritious eating habits instead of relying on fast food or ultra processed convenience meals. The goal isn't to eliminate leftovers, the goal is to respect them. Food deserves the same care after dinner as it did while you were cooking it. If you remember just 4 things from today's video, let them be these: refrigerate leftovers promptly, store them properly, reheat them thoroughly, and never ignore food that's been left out too long. These simple habits are supported by decades of food safety research and can dramatically lower your risk of foodborne illness. Most importantly, don't let myths distract you from the real science. The evidence doesn't tell us to fear reheated food. It teaches us to handle food responsibly. By making small, consistent changes in your kitchen, you can continue enjoying leftovers with confidence while protecting both your health and the health of your family. Because when it comes to nutrition and cancer prevention, the biggest wins don't come from believing viral myths. They come from understanding the science, making informed choices, and practicing healthy habits every single day.